On this episode of Lapeef, Let's Talk.
If you wanted to market to black men, you had to market to the black community and kind of catch black men in a shotgun billboard approach. Well, the internet has democratized the airwaves so much to where now you got a burgeoning new jazz happening to where being a man is kind of cool right now. It's everywhere. What do we do with it though? And one of the main things we're doing with it is more men are starting to stand up and saying, all right, look, what happened before, my daddy, the failures of the past, such and so forth, can we have a middle ground and meet somewhere? And that's why I'm glad these kind of platforms exist. That's why I still come around and lend my support to things like this, because these are important conversations. But I'm only willing to have the conversation in one direction.
Hey, y'all, I'm bring up Kevin to the show.
What's going on,
everybody?
Kev? What's happening?
How you doing?
Hi. Oh, well, how's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Good. How are you?
Good. So I caught a little bit of the broadcast, but I'm always fascinated on this whole image thing. Earlier this week, I taught on what was it? It was Birth of a Mindset, the Power of Image. And I went all the way back to D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation and linked it in with the current image of black people, black men in particular. There could be a case made before mass media, 1915, where people still wrote letters, telegraph. Something like major motion pictures, cinema, silent film had a massive impact upon the psyche. Prior to 1915, the Ku Klux Klan had been dead since 1871, post-construction. But Birth of a Nation was responsible for single-handedly reviving the Klan and in the progressive movement, swelling the rank of the Ku Klux Klan to over 6 million people. But we're in 2021. The image of black people is in the control of black people far more than D.W. Griffith or anybody like that. And far too many black people forego the ultimate responsibility of individual contribution to the overall ethnic image. And I'll give you an example. There's a movie called The Hollywood Shuffle. And in the 80s, Robert Townsend made fun of black folks with all the blaxploitation films, this and that. And they said, well, that's the only roles they'll give us. And ultimately, the premise was we don't have to take the roles. There's always work at the post office. Other groups get this. One of the most famous groups that got this in this country was Chinese people. They stopped doing roles of coolies, dishwashers, and all that other stuff and started making their own films in their mainland. And it was almost impossible to project those images of Asian people today. If black people refuse to walk around carrying these images individually, it is going to be damn near impossible for the greater society to perpetuate a narrative. But that ends up putting the responsibility back on each of us individually to our collective group ethnic image. So I keep hearing this conversation that we don't control it. It's the people who greenlight it. It's the people who do this. It's the people who do that. And what comes first? The people greenlighting projects to make money? Because they'll greenlight whatever makes them money. But if there was no money to be made off of these cartoonish, buffoonish images of black people, they'd stop doing it. Which comes first? Us doing it and them profiting off of us doing it and consuming it, or them greenlighting it and us just mindlessly falling into it? That seems to be the ultimate argument.
I got a question for you, because a long time ago, way back in the early 90s, when the Boys in the Hoods came out and the Minister Societies and stuff like that came out, my family, my father, and a lot of the people just refused to let us watch it. Like, they refused to take us to the show. They refused to support it, the whole 9 yards. Even today, there seems to be no level of responsibility or accountability when it comes to people not supporting or not continuing to go to the show, even when it comes to these slave movies or you know, a lot of these older films. I think one of the films that I still see celebrated today is The Color Purple, and people champion it as though it's something that we should watch, like it's a part of our history or something. What do you think about, like, generation after generation, people continuing to celebrate within the Black community and hold up these images and these movies and all of this type of stuff as something that we should champion or celebrate, or if you haven't watched it, then you're not Black or something like that? What do you think about that?
Personally, I can't stand The Color Purple. And if you're doing your research on The Color Purple, back in the 80s when it first came out, I was a teenager at the time. There was hot controversy in the Black community, Black men standing up around the country saying this is going to have a deleterious, damaging effect on Black people for generations to come. But of course, it got downplayed by who? Alice Walker, Black feminist, and sadly, a lot of Black women, Oprah Winfrey, and these portrayals saying, no, it's not. It's the other way. And we can see what happens right now. Today, you see so many people operating like the only kind of Black men that exist are Mr. and his daddy, the abusive, toxic, Black masculine image that is supposed to be the inside of every Black man. But then when you ask an individual woman, have you ever experienced a man like this in your personal life? No, I just hear about it. Black men have been dealing with the ramifications of that movie. And if you can pull it up right now, there were debates all over the country. It's on microfiche. There are old articles in the New York Times, the LA Times, the Washington Post, talking about the damage that they feared it was going to cause, and they've drastically underestimated. I don't think it should be watched. I think it should be banned like the book was. The problem is we as a culture, well, not even we as a culture, let's be honest, Black women is of art. They mythologize this stuff. I don't know many Black men who ran out to see The Color Purple. We were drugged to see this with our mothers and our aunts, right along with the Women of Brewster Place and all these other things. Because unfortunately, we have a matriarchal culture to where Black men have been convinced if you don't support these things, you're not Black. Well, how about this? If you want to support something Black, support a lot of stuff that Spike Lee was doing. He couldn't even get Malcolm X funded. You know, we are responsible for the images we put out. And as Black men, I will say more than anything else, you cannot continue to get mad at the dominant society for their portrayals of us that we continue to openly participate in on a daily basis, especially when we sit around and talk in such an educated way of knowing that it's about making money. Well, then who's more the fool? We're fools for following.
Kevin, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So your show that you did about Birth of a Nation with W.D. Griffin, you specifically said that the idea and the characteristics that they had as far as with the Black people, it was just what he heard. But during that time with Black folks with the Reconstruction area, you know, we were in politics and we were owning businesses and things like that during that time. But however, Birth of a Nation characterized us as buffoons. Mm-hmm. And because of that, and it came out in the media, then that's what the world saw us as. Mm-hmm. So do you see that now with, you know, the Love and Hip Hops and shows like that still shows us as buffooneries and cooneries?
It's
however,
worse. It's worse.
Yeah.
It's
worse. Do you think
because
that's systematic, that you think that's done to keep us in this era of Black folks being buffooneries and we're not?
Back then, D.W. Griffith, he was a racist, like most people were racist back then, because that's just the time. He wasn't like a political racist. He did a movie about an Asian man and a white woman falling in love. He was just careless and reckless. That's what the video essay talked about. Mm-hmm. He actually came out as a free speech advocate because he thought people were actually coming against his art, not the racism overtones. He didn't know what he was doing, but there were no Black people in Hollywood, so the Black actors were white men in blackface, and they were doing what they thought black people were. And where'd you see black people? In cartoons, in political comic strips, basically from where black people live, predominantly in the South. So all their depictions were all the caricatures. And then when they did have black people in there, they just brought them in there and they put them in the Capitol House, gave them fried chicken and watermelon, told them to put their feet up on the desk. People did not run into black people like that in a segregated country at the turn of the century. So that's what they were left with, because it was on TV, it was on a movie. It has to be true. But they didn't, like I said, it was 1,300 black men in office at that time. Then we start seeing them being killed off, intimidated, and even the people who are even white people, the NAACP was founded by white folk, not us.
Yeah.
FDR, Eleanor Roosevelt, Ski Wee. I mean, she's an AKA. We really got to go back into our history. But now fast forward to love and hip hop. Love and hip hop works because we consume love and hip hop. And I know it said, well, they watch it too. They watch it too, but we consume. If you took love and hip hop off, I guarantee you nobody in the Buckhead suburbs or whatever your white suburb is of your city would complain or picket to have it put back on. There are more love and hip hop or Real Housewives of Atlanta or whatever. For whom? It's for the people who watch that stuff, and it's us. So why? And they know why they're doing it. The one show that I've actually seen black women fight back against was Mona Scott's Sorority Girls.
Yes, they did. That didn't even show.
Because that was the one line that told me we still got some pride. They would not allow that depiction. Now the sad thing is, there were still women who were deltas, AKAs, Sigma Gamma Rhos, and Zetas, who were willing to go do this broadcast, but the national organization stood up and said, ain't gonna happen. And they put money behind it and shut that stuff down. We don't benefit from these depictions. This is bottom line. We don't benefit. So if somebody individually benefits from it, we can decide to say no. The question is, because it always comes back, well, somebody's going to do it for the money. Okay, then we need to employ our own people. We need to have our own media apparatus, and it's going to require more than talking. It's going to require us actually putting together black media for us, by us, that actually has the depictions that we are proud of. You can't expect a dominant society who benefits from your being at the bottom to actually decide to say, we've got enough of your money. We'll go ahead and take your 1.6 trillion spending power and back to your community. And now they're going to keep using it as long as we let them.
Yeah. I think that I was one before, champion Tyler Perry for, okay, now we're doing black production and we can create our own. But then again, what he's been producing, it's still caricatures of the angry black woman and the weak black man. So the only production that I've seen that we have is still perpetuating the color purple mindset that it was in the 80s. So I guess where do we begin?
Well, Tyree, I was very much a critic of those, mama going to church things, the Chitlin Circuit plays. But I always ask myself, is this a means to an end? Now that Tyler Perry Studios does exist, and I've started to see different kinds of movies and content come out. What was that one movie where he got criticized for Felicia Rashad's part in it, and all the women in their bad wigs and everything? You remember which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, she played the bad guy, I believe.
But it was an uncharacteristic depiction of black women from Tyler Perry. He went off cold. He actually showed black women being hypergamous, out for the money. He flipped the script. and of course he still had, and black women kind of like, but I'm sitting back and I was like, I'm like, does he have the freedom to do something different? I don't know. But we don't need any more of that. I know that much. We don't need any more mama this, mama that, just like we don't need any more 12 years a slave or anything else like that. But if we want to see different things, if we want to see movies like that, we have to support them with our money, and make those profitable, and that's why I'm kind of encouraged by what's going on right now, that now it's like, before there was no way to effectively talk to black men, market to black men. If you wanted to market to black men, you had to market to the black community and kind of catch black men in a shotgun billboard approach. Well, the internet has democratized the airwaves so much to where now you got a burgeoning new jazz happening, to where being a man is kind of cool right now. It's everywhere. What do we do with it though? And one of the main things we're doing with it is more men are starting to stand up and saying, all right, look, what happened before, my daddy, the failures of the past, such and so forth, can we have a middle ground and meet somewhere? And that's why I'm glad these kind of platforms exist. That's why I still come around and lend my support to things like this, because these are important conversations. But I'm only willing to have the conversation in one direction: strict accountability on us. I'm not willing to put accountability on. Yes, other things exist. White supremacy, racism. Yes, they will always exist. They will always exist. If we were not here, they'd find someone else. The question is not the problem with white supremacy and racism. The point is making yourself powerful enough to where it doesn't affect you. That's what I don't want to say the word because YouTube dings these particular words. That's what God's original people did, right? According to, that part of the world, they made themselves so powerful that if you mess with them, they're going to shut your business down. They're going to make some phone calls. You're going to hear from the Anti-Defamation League, the LGBT community. They did the same thing. Heck, the Tea Party there for the longest. Well, we can take some pictures. You don't need 100%. 10% will do. 10% with their money focused in the right place.